This is a short revision video on the economic problem, which is a module in the Markets and Failure module of Economics AS level with AQA. The central purpose of economic activity is to produce goods and economic services to meet needs and wants. Goods are tangible products, which means things that you can hold, like a microphone, a plant, something like that, or services are intangible products, which provide intangible benefits like tourism, going on holiday, that'll be an intangible product, or maybe banking, finance, something like that. And another purpose of economic activity is to increase economic welfare for citizens. And economic welfare is the benefit or satisfaction that an individual or society gets from the allocation of resources. And it's sort of based on a few things like how well off people feel, how much people have in terms of stuff, the standard of living, physical well-being of the occupants of a country, things like that. But there is also an economic problem, dun dun dun, which is that people have infinite wants and there are scarce resources, which leads to opportunity cost, because there's not enough resources on the planet to make everything that anyone might want, so we have to choose what to make. And opportunity cost is the next best alternative when an economic decision is made. So say I've got £10 and I can either buy a plant for £10 or a book for £10. If I choose to buy the book, it means that I'm giving up the plant. So the opportunity cost of buying the book is the plant. And it can be done on a much bigger scale. So for example, for a firm, it can either produce books or plants. So the opportunity cost of producing books would be plants. Stuff like that. Here are two really important definitions that you need to learn because they come up a lot in multiple choice questions. So economic goods are scarce goods with an opportunity cost. So it means they are limited in supply, and if you buy them it means you can't buy something else, or if you produce them it means you can't produce something else. A free good is basically the opposite of an economic good, so it's a good that is not scarce and has no opportunity cost. I mean, an example of this might be seawater, because it's not scarce, there's so much of it, it's almost an unlimited amount, and you can take seawater and you don't have to give up anything else. It's quite hard to think of things for free goods. The things that we use to get these other goods are the factors of production, which you came across in GCSE. And factors of production are capital, enterprise, land and labour, and a lot of people learn them as CELL, C-E-L-L. So capital is the stock of goods used to make other goods, so machinery used to make other goods like drills, maybe computers, printers, and you actually get an income from capital, which is interest. Enterprise is risk takers who bring the factors of production together. So an example of enterprise is Alan Sugar, J.K. Rowling, Bill Gates. Bill Gates, is that a person? I think that's the person who made Microsoft, him. He's quite important, and you can get a lot of profit, so the factor income is profit for enterprise. Land is not only the land itself, but also minerals and the resources taken from the land, and anything on the land. So the factory, I think that's covered under land. And the income you get from owning land is rent. And the final factor of production is labour, so the potential workforce, so you and me eventually. So that's the physical people, their skills, their abilities, their intelligence, and these people get paid wages. Obviously all of these can be improved or worsened, which leads to changes in the production possibility boundary, and we'll come to that in like a couple of minutes. There are a few useful terms that you need to know at the bottom of the slide, like the fact market, which is the market for factors of production, and then renewable and non-renewable resources. Obviously, renewable resources are resources that are able to be replenished over time, like forests and fish stocks, though if we overfish, then fish stocks may not be renewable, and we might never have tuna sandwiches again, which could be a good thing, because tuna does give one awfully bad breath. And then non-renewable resources are things that will run out, like oil and coal. And when they run out, we are doomed. Dun dun dun. Different members of society have different economic objectives, and there are four main members of society, I suppose you could call them. There's consumers, workers, firms, and governments. And consumers, their main aim, they're very self-centred, is to maximise their own welfare. and they'll make rational choices. Like someone might be hungry and they'll think, ooh, I'll buy an apple, and that'll be a rational choice. It'll make them feel less hungry, hopefully, and they'll feel better, so better welfare. Workers, they just want to get a lot of, what they want from working. They want to have maximum gain. So, not only higher wages, but also better working conditions, like longer holidays, maybe a company car, though I always think people look a bit stupid and they're rolling around in their car that's just painted with the logo on the side. I don't know, I can't afford a car, so I'd probably take a company car. I can't even drive. I'm not even 17. What the hell am I on about? Firms want to maximise profits. So that's, if a profit is basically when a total firm revenue is greater than total costs. And that's their main aim, really, for most firms, except for, the non-profit firms, charities and that sort of thing, but we're not going to think about those, because they're just awkward. And finally, governments who want to increase the welfare of people. And obviously governments have got their own objectives in the macroeconomic world, but that'll be in another video if I can be bothered to make macroeconomic videos. And also governments are also quite self-centred. They want to increase their own popularity so they get voted in again and again and again. Going back to allocation of resources, it's the consumer that controls the market. They decide what's going to be produced, and there's a really simple step-by-step thing which shows how. So say the consumer no longer wants a product, so they don't buy the product, so the firms don't make profit from the product, and they stop producing the product. Let's just do a really quick example. Say, all at once pencils suddenly become really unpopular. Everyone's like, ugh, we don't want pencils, we want pens. So they no longer buy pencils, and the firm won't make any profit from selling pencils, so it will stop producing pencils, and thus the wood and the lead used to make pencils will go into making another product. And that is basically how scarce resources are allocated. Prices have three really major, really important roles within the market economy, which is the incentive function, the rationing function, and the signalling function. The incentive function means that firms will have an incentive to produce a good when prices rise or fall. So if prices rise, firms will have an incentive to produce the good because they can make more profit from it. Hence why the supply curve slopes upwards, because as prices rise, more firms enter the market because they can make more profit. Whilst if prices fall, it's a disincentive for firms to produce the good, so less is produced and the resources are allocated elsewhere. The second role of prices is the rationing function, which works when there is greater demand or greater supply at any given price, so disequilibrium. So say there's excess supply or excess demand, prices can change to adjust to cause there to be an equilibrium again. So say there's excess demand, if we put the prices up, some people won't be able to afford the good anymore, which means that demand will fall. Hopefully at some point demand will meet supply, so there'll be an equilibrium, and that's how the rationing function works really, and of course it can work with supply the other way around. We'll come to this later on in another video with demand and supply diagrams, which will make it much simpler. And the final role of prices is the signalling function. So this is really for the producers. So say prices rise, producers see there is a scarcity of the good, and so they produce more. And if prices fall, it means that the producers can see that there's been excess supply and they produce less, so that demand and supply can balance each other out. This is all to do with the role of prices in a free market economy, and it's just a good idea to define what a free market economy is. So in a free market economy, there is little government involvement in the provision of goods and services, although the government does ensure that the rules of markets are fair. A short and sweet slide now, although it's not really sweet because it's tax, which is just grim and unpleasant and depressing. There are two types of taxes, direct taxes and indirect taxes. Direct taxes are taxes on income, such as income tax and inheritance tax, and these tend to be regressive, which means that they take a larger proportion of a wealthier person's income, whilst indirect taxes are taxes on spending, which tend to be proportional or progressive, which means that they take either equal amounts from a rich person or a poor person's income, or progressive, which means they take a greater proportion from a rich person's income. It doesn't really matter too much if you didn't follow that progressive-regressive thing, because that's all going to be explained later on. Moving on now to something quite exciting, which is the production possibility boundary, which might be written sometimes as the PPB. And this indicates the maximum possible output that can be achieved. And if you've done macroeconomics already, then this is similar to the LRAS, really. YE or YF, I never knew which one it is, anyway. This maximum possible output depends on a set of variables being fixed. So we've got a fixed set of resources, a fixed technology, and it's within a particular time period. Any point that is on the PPB is productively efficient because it means that firms are producing maximum total output from their inputs at minimum total cost. And if you're on the PPB, it also means that you've got allocative efficiency, because it's impossible to produce more of one good without producing less of another good. So say we're at point YZ on the production possibility curve and we want to make more of product A, we can't make more of product A without making less of product B, and we'll come to that in more detail on the next slide. If there's any point that's within the PPB, such as Q on the diagram on the slide, it means that not all the resources are being used to their full capacity, so we're not producing the maximum amount possible. If we move from Q to any point on the red line, it means that we haven't achieved an increase in our capacity to produce, we've just produced more. If we're within the PPB, it means that there's less or no opportunity cost, because we can move from Q to the line without giving up any more of product A or product B. Although once we're on the PPB, we'll get opportunity cost once again. It's not possible to go beyond the PPB in the short term, but as we'll see later, you can cause the PPB to shift outwards, which means that you've got an increased potential output. I'm really sorry, I feel like this is the most boring video I've ever made. I think it's because I'm half asleep, even though it's only 10:30, which is quite embarrassing. I've not even had a long day, but I just want to lie down and get some rest before mocks next week, which are going to kill me. Absolutely, totally wreck me. Want to cry. Anyway, let's get more awake, more live. Woo! We're going to do about the production possibility boundary and opportunity cost. So say we have a shift from our position on the PPB from U to V. It means that product A, we're making less of it, so the amount that's being produced of product A has fallen from W to Y, whilst the amount being made of product B has risen from X to Z. Woo! Which means that the opportunity cost of producing product B instead of product A is the reduced amount of product A that we're making, which is W minus Y. I mean the reduction in the amount of product A that we're making. And then if we did V to U, we'd be able to see that the same is true, but obviously different letters and everything. But I'm sure you could work that out yourself, so I'm not going to run through that with you, because I don't want to totally bore you to death, and I want to go to bed. So, what would cause the PPB to shift outward and thus increase our maximum potential output? There are four main factors, so that would be finding new resources, improving technology, increasing productivity, and improving the quality of resources. If we find new resources, so for example new factors of production, it means that we are able to produce more. And I'll give you some examples to show this. Say we've got loads of immigration, loads of people come in, there's an increase in the population. It means we can have more people in factories making stuff. And say we find new mineral deposits or oil fields, we've got more materials, shall we say, that these new people can make stuff with, so we've got more that we can make, which is awesome. If we improve technology, it means that fewer resources are required to produce a unit of output, and that means that resources are freed up to be used in other areas, so we can increase production in other areas. Then there is increasing productivity. Productivity is output per worker per period of time. That's a really important definition. And then you can have different types of productivity as well. So you've got capital productivity, labour productivity, land productivity, and then factor productivity. And we'll come to all those later. Never mix up productivity with production. Production is the total amount produced. Anyway, say we increase labour productivity, it means that workers produce more output with the same inputs. And capital investment, which is when we buy new machinery, means that we can increase our production potential because we can make more in the same amount of time, because maybe the new machinery is faster at printing newspapers, so we can print more. Don't know why we'd want to print more, but maybe we can. And the final way we can shift the PPB outwards would be to improve the quality of our resources. So we can invest in human capital, such as educating them, training them, that sort of thing, which increases productivity and thus output increases. There are methods of improving the quality of our resources, such as the division of labour and specialisation. Division of labour is breaking the production process down into a sequence of tasks, so each worker does a different thing. So say we're making a plant pot, maybe the first worker does the clay, heats it up, the next worker rolls it into a pot shape, next worker puts it in the kiln, next worker takes it out the kiln, next worker paints it, and the last worker glazes it. Maybe we can have a few more workers boxing it, sending it away, whatever. And that just is much faster than one worker doing all of those things. And we could also do specialisation, which is when different firms or different countries produce different things. And for this to work, you need a method of exchange, because otherwise, say I decided to make books and you decided to make food, and we were the only two people on this island. If we couldn't trade, I'd just be stuck with a load of books, which would be, very educational or maybe interesting to read, whatever, but I would starve to death. And whilst you would have a lot of food, get fat, you would have a really boring time, so you wouldn't be able to read. But say we can trade, then we can both have food and books. Although we need a few more people, because we'd probably want a bit of water and stuff like that. The production possibility boundary can also shift inwards, alas. For example, if there's falling life expectancy or disease, it means that workers are less productive, because maybe they're weaker, which means that they can produce less in the same amount of time. So our capacity to produce falls, so we can make less. Or say we've got machinery and we don't look after it and it gets rusty, means it breaks down a bit, stops working, so we can't produce as much. Lower capital productivity. Now we're going to move on to part shifts of the PPB. So it's not a total shift, it's a weird shift. So say the efficiency and productivity increases in the production of one good, in this case good B. It means that we can produce more of good... Oh, I just hit a plant with my hand. I was doing these actions like throwing my hand to the side like we're producing more, and there's this plant here, and I just hit it. That's probably why I keep using plant examples, because I've got a plant here, plant pot. Anyway, sorry, you don't really care about that. Sorry, where was I? There's an increase in the productive potential for good B, whereas there's no increase in the productive potential for good A. It means that we only see a shift for the good B part. So the good A, the maximum amount we can produce for good A is still at the same level, whereas for good B we can produce more. So as you can see, the PPB1 shifts to PPB2. It's not very neat, looks a bit messy, but that's life. I can't draw. I tried. I failed. And finally, something really random. I've got no idea why this is in this chapter, this unit, this whole economics course, but it's a few different statement types. So we've got a positive statement, which can be tested against real-world data. It doesn't matter if it's true or not, but as long as you can see whether it's true or false, that means it's a positive statement. For example, I could say economic growth in the UK was 4% in 2007. I have no idea whether that's true or not, but that is a positive statement, because if you went on the internet you could look it up and it would tell you whether it was true or false. A normative statement is a statement that requires a value judgment to be made. It means it's basically an opinion. So I could say the government should spend more on healthcare, and you could look on the internet, but you wouldn't get a solid answer. You wouldn't be able to say, yes, that's definitely true, because it depends on my value judgment, and a value judgment is not testable or verifiable. It just depends on my views, the views of the individual. So they're basically some statement types, and they come up so much in multiple choices. You should probably get one of those in your multiple choice. It's worth a mark. Every mark counts. Make sure you get that. And it is balloon time! Woo! For those of you who are new to my channel, I just have a balloon at the end of every video to celebrate the fact that someone's got to the end of the video. I've got no idea if anyone's ever going to get here, but you know, from time to time, people get to the end of the videos and they get a balloon as a reward. Lucky them. If you need anything, just comment or tell me. I've got copies of notes I can email to you that I've made, which are much more detailed than stuff that I've done in my videos. And watch out for more videos, because this is the first of many, obviously, because I think there's at least 10, probably about 10 videos that I'll make all together for just microeconomics, and there's macro as well. So plenty of fun there. Have a lovely day.